maintaining that inner balance, the art of maintaining that well balance of light and darkness, good over evil, in a world system of such chaos, confusion, such wickedness, such deception. Good over evil. Yes, I. Yes, Selassie. Now that we've got past commercial Christmas, so-called December 25th, it is now officially so-called December 27th, the last few days of so-called 2020, what many call the so-called pagan New Year, or the so-called New Year, the classic traditional dropping of the ball. They say Happy New Year every time. At the stroke of midnight on so-called December 1st to so-called January the 1st. So-called January the 1st. So now, that is when people wake up. Begin to wake up from the trance, that Hallow Thinks Christmas trance that most people have been under and still are under in these last days. But for I and I, we've already woken up from out of Babylon, from out of confusion. You know, so regarding other so-called pagan traditions of man, the so-called pagan New Years and Lupercalia, so-called Valentine's Day, we don't really have to even get into that. Although I would highly suggest ones to do their own research, of course. Maintaining that well balance when it comes to true faith, true righteous liberty, a true faith, a spiritual way of life, not the dark side of religion, but the origin, the true definition of religios regarding the further teachings of His Imperial Majesty, in parallel to the teachings of Yahushua, of what they call Jesus Christ, the Messiah, both in the first and second advent, as the one true King of Kings. In other previous incarnations, other types of advents, not so much the advent or incarnation as Messiah or as the Christos, but other incarnations of the Anointed One, the Enlightened One.
And for the moment, we will be speaking about the connection of Buddha and Rastafari, from Buddhism to Rastafari. But before we go into that with the few moments that we have, let us encourage you once again.
We have this classic book I just recently received back from a good friend of mine, titled The Parallel Sayings, or the Parallel Teachings of Jesus and Buddha, that Jesus, whose original Hebrew name is Yeshua or Yahushua, the Messiah and the Great Enlightened One. Both the Christos, the Anointed One, and the Great Enlightened One, known as the Buddha. Now, let's not get too caught up in the image, the photograph image, an old European depiction or perception of what they call Jesus Christ today. We don't deal with Antichrist Jesus, with the true Christ Jesus or Jesus. The parallel sayings of Yeshua and the great Buddha. We take an image of His Imperial Majesty. We envision His Majesty's face with the long dreadlocks and a proper symbolism of Yeshua, the proper, more accurate image of Jesus Christ. And we have the Buddha right here, inside. And of course, in time to come, we will be going into more video lectures and studies on the parallel sayings or the parallel teachings of Jesus Christ, the teachings of Yeshua, the Messiah, and the great Buddha. Are they one and the same? Perhaps two different incarnations, Salika. Two different incarnations of the Anointed One, the Supreme Angel of the Presence. Yes, I. Hallelujah. Rastafari. Dunya, Yeshua, I. The third eye, the true Christ mind, the true mind of Messiah, the fulfillment of the Torah and the prophets. That third eye is open through Yahweh's grace, through Jah's grace, and through His majesty. That's the one true King of Kings, Aliyah, Selassie I. So let's open that third eye. This eye. As you see, I bought myself a Hanukkah Christmas Kwanzaa gift. That's right, not commercial Christmas, but the true Christmas season, or that true mass, that true righteous gathering of the true Christos, or Christ, the anointed. Once again, not Antichrist Jesus, but the true Christ Jesus, or Christ Jesus, whose name is Yeshua, the Messiah. And that first epiphany, or that sighting of the Messiah child in the first Advent, leading up to the true Ethiopian Christmas, January 7th, Gregorically speaking. But that goes to the Julian calendar, not the Gregorian, but the Julian calendar, and its parallel reference of telling time. Now, is it okay to participate in so-called New Year's Eve? Well, we must learn the pagan origins, or so-called pagan origins. You know, the word pagan is pagan, but the so-called pagan origins dealing with witchcraft and idolatry. We know the whole connection with Janus, the goddess, or that false goddess called Janus, and regarding the so-called pagan New Year. However, is it okay to go out on so-called December 31st, so-called New Year's Eve, and say Happy New Year? Of course, because this is how we tell time in these last of last days in this society. So, we could do good on these traditions of man. There's much time to do good on Shabbat. This year's New Year's Eve falls on a so-called Friday evening, a Sabbath Eve, going into so-called Saturday, the true 7-day Shabbat, that true 7-day Sabbath, according to Jah's commandments. Yes, I. Now, as you look, we see the Nintendo Mini, or the Nintendo Mini Classic, hooked up to the TV in the kitchen. Yes, I. As far as other so-called traditions and folly days, these mainstream holidays of Babylon system, what we call society today, these worldly influences don't have much effect on I. They don't have any effect on I and I. But to those who choose to participate in other ones, like so-called Valentine's Day, I would highly suggest take more time to meditate and pray about these things. Of course, look up the origin of so-called Valentine's Day and Lupercalia. Take more time to pray about it. Ask the Most High Jah. Ask the Father, is this right? Is this kosher, spiritually, kosher or righteous for me to participate in something like that? You can improvise and get your spouse, get your lover a gift, perhaps the week before or the week after, so that he or she does not feel left out if ones are so tied down to these traditions of man. But me personally, I don't celebrate Valentine's Day. But my lady Pam and I's anniversary is a week before Valentine's Day, so of course she gets flowers and she gets love, so she don't feel too left out. But there's ways to improvise with that, of course. Now, this blessed evening, we're about to get into a higher meditation. We have the classic Super Mario Brothers on this Nintendo Mini Classic hooked up to the TV right here in the kitchen. Let us proceed. So yes, stay tuned for the upcoming videos of how to open our third eye, both mentally, spiritually, and to decipher, decode these subliminal messages, these cosmic subliminal messages that we have seen since our early childhood with classic cartoons and video games. Some good, some bad. These hidden gems of wisdom and cryptic messages that have been right before our eyes the whole time. With that extra man, there we go. It's a memory muscle. All right. That big mushroom again. Super Mario. So yeah, we see the cosmic, cryptic messages of two plumbers, two brothers that eat the magic mushrooms. They get the superpowers because they're on a big psychedelic trip, and they end up in a different world, a different dimension, fighting giant Koopas and little reptilian hybrids. A lot of subliminal messages we see manifest from the spiritual, the physical, with our mind's eye, and the eye, Selassie eye. Stay tuned.